Hey cats, it's your midsole man EDDBUD here, back with another dose of running news for you. Today we're looking at the Boston Marathon, also the Nike Alphafly Next Percent 3, and why nobody have actually copied the Vaporfly carbon plate PEGASUS setup. We got some new running shoe releases for you, and also an interesting article that I found online about runners' foot strike. Let's get to it. Thanks for joining me on the channel once again, people. Back with some running news for you. Do subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. Also give this video a thumbs up like, that really helps us out. Share it with your running buddies too. Danke schön. First story today, all about the Boston Marathon. It's coming up on April the 17th, so in about a week's time, in fact. I'm really pleased to be in attendance for that, soaking up the atmosphere courtesy of Puma. Will you be racing or watching the marathon? Let me know in the comments. Hope to see you out there, and some reasonable weather as well. You don't want it too hot, you don't want it too cold. Let's hope it doesn't turn out like 2018 where it was just good to even finish. I think the runners there were battling through 25-mile-an-hour winds. Seemed to be very, very low temperatures as well. I did have a look around to see what the past sort of weather conditions were there. Is it like 2 centigrade or something? It's really awful. I think lots of people got hypothermia and had to be sort of treated by the medical staff, and there was loads of rain as well. Lots of puddles around everywhere. It must be pretty tough for the organisers and those who are actually helping out with the course as well. Some of the marshals, they must get freezing in those types of temperatures, so let's hope it's reasonable. Lots of puddles will not be conducive to Kip, the mile master, as he attempts to get around the course. Everybody's saying he's going to go for the course record. Let's remember though, this is a predominantly downhill course, so it's not eligible for any world records or anything. I think it's about 450 feet of loss over the whole course, but downhill isn't always plain sailing. If anybody's done a marathon with lots of downhill sections, you know they take a real toll on certain parts of the legs. Just put strain in different places than you would typically get if you're on a flat or going uphill, so it can be a bit of a curse rather than a blessing that it seems. I would assume that with this type of elevation profile and the numerous hill climbs are on the Boston course, then people that are gonna be running this one have been training, doing lots of hill reps. It'd be great actually in my town. You could do a brilliant marathon here if you wanted elevation. There's like a bowl right the way round the edge of the town, and there's loads of hills in the middle. It's almost got its own ecosystem at times. It does look very similar in terms of the weather we've got here right now in the UK over in Boston, Massachusetts. Weather in Boston's looking okay-ish, a 25% chance of rain on one of the websites, and around 6 to 9 mile-an-hour winds, so that's quite reasonable, I suppose. The wheelchair race will kick off around about 5 minutes past 9, and you're going to have 13-degree temperatures. It's a little bit warm, really. Perhaps so warm that you'll want those showers. There's another website reckoned it was about 40% chance of rain, so I would expect there to be a little bit of moisture out there. Some of the runners might actually be quite happy for that to happen, just to cool them down a little bit. 13C's a little bit too hot. Excited to get over to Boston with my hosts Puma. I'm going to be checking out their exciting lineup this year and for next year as well, though I won't be able to talk much about that until later in the year. Story 2. So there's a few images of the Alphafly Next Percent 3 that have surfaced online. People even running in them as well at certain marathons recently. It got me thinking about why the likes of like Hoka, Saucony, Puma, Adidas and so on haven't actually completely copied the swoosh with the design that they've got in the Vaporfly. I realised that nobody's actually directly copied exactly what Nike have used. I reckon there's probably a reason for that. There's a patent. Nike are quite aggressive in the defense of those patents too. When you think about it, there isn't another non-beaded PEGASUS midsole shoe that's got a carbon plate in it that isn't forked, that's just like a straight out spatula, that's positioned in that particular angle that we have in the Vaporfly, that's also got that specific heel to toe drop. Something we haven't seen from any of the other brands. They always change it up very slightly. It probably is down to that design and a patent that surrounds it, I would have thought. Look at how Nike went after Skechers and Lululemon as well recently. Nike really went at them for using that Flyknit design in one of their recent shoes, and a lot of these Skechers shoes are practically Nike Air rip-offs really. Adidas use energy rods rather than a plate now. They got different foams there and blades as well in the Prime X. Very different to some of Nike's designs. ASICS have got very different plate positioning in their Metaspeed Sky and Metaspeed Edge shoes, and a different heel to toe drop as well. It's much lower than the Vaporfly. It's not going to use a beaded P-backs type stuff in the midsole. Kind of looks a bit like Boost material, I suppose, when you think about it. Hoka are using a forked plate in the Rocket X2. I think Puma have used something similar as well in their recent efforts. I mean, Puma have even completely disconnected the two sections of the midsole here, only connected by that carbon plate. I reckon they're not allowed to simply produce a replica of that design. That's probably what we're seeing here. That's probably why we've not seen anyone produce something that is exactly the same. I do expect Nike to keep that Alphafly shoe as their experimental model. It's going to be one that always fits the exact requirements and specifications of Kipchoge, a little bit like what they did with the Air Jordan line over the many years that it's existed, just producing shoes that are tuned to his specific needs. Part 3, we got some running shoe recent releases. Nike have finally launched their latest iteration of their daily use shoe for all runners. The Pegasus 40 is dropped in a whole ton of different colorways, from a predominantly black version to the standard black and white, along with an almost off-white variant too. It's going to be one of those releases that people either leap straight on or they wait until they appear in the discount bins. To be honest, there's not a whole lot new here. I've actually been put off from getting this really. I just can't really warrant spending out the money to buy a shoe that's practically the same as the one before. I did include it in a yay or nay the other day, but I just don't see the point in getting it. It's exactly the same midsole and outsole, and there appear to be very little differences in the upper. Now, that might be great for you. You might have loved the Pegasus 39, and if so, well, it's out now. Nike have got it in stock along with loads of other online retailers for around about 115 Earth credits here in the UK. So great if you like the last one, because it's pretty much the same. ASICS have launched their CUMULUS 25 to the world. This is a touch lighter than the Nimbus 25 and a little cheaper too, still with that Flight Foam Blast Plus midsole material and encapsulated pure gel too. Could be a good alternative to the Pegasus line if that's something that you've grown a bit bored of recently. That CUMULUS 25 appears to be retailing for around about 145 notes, so it's a little bit more expensive than the Pegasus here in the UK. Really interesting one here. Some of the viewers let me know that this one had dropped from REEBOK, the FLOATRIDE Energy Shield System shoes. Now, this is only available in some really weird sizing. I'm not sure what's happened there, why it's just in like a few sizes up to about an 8. It retails for 160 notes. It appears to be the same midsole and outsole setup as per the FLOATRIDE Energy X, but with a very different upper grafted onto the top. There appears to be some type of wire system in there to help create a lockdown over the top of the foot. Almost looks like a foam or plastic material really, rather than a sort of material mesh. I can't imagine that it's going to be any lighter than the previous version of the Energy X that was released last year. £20 more expensive than the Energy X, and this burnt orange version is really weird looking. Seems to be more a fashion shoe than anything. I can't really see that this is gonna set the whole world alight. I'm still holding out for a return of the fantastic Run Fast series that had a P-backs midsole, and they just seem to have completely put that one to the side. Please bring it back, Reebok. You'll make a lot of people happy. Story 4. So an interesting article here I found from Running Clinic. I think it may be a French website, not entirely sure. They've published a story that surrounds the runner's foot strike. So how many people heel strike, and is it as bad as everybody makes out it is? Well, the answer here is that about 60% of elite athletes that they captured during a marathon actually heel strike. 90% of track runners that they measured forefoot strike. So let's remember that many of the shoes used for road running have a much sort of higher drop, in like a 10 or 8mm drop from heel to toe. Track shoes obviously don't have that amount of foam in them anyway, some of them very little foam whatsoever. I think they based a lot of the observations here using like high definition cameras. They were to pick up a lot more information than they have done in the past. Let's remember though that towards the end of a marathon, people are going to get fatigued, even the top athletes there. They're going to get tired, they may be landing perhaps a little bit more on the heel, their whole sort of running economy, form might start to dip, even those top people. They do mention though on the website that many of those elite runners do show a very quick flattening of the foot as the foot hits the floor. Much of them were landing with their foot sort of directly underneath the hips with a bit of a bent knee, and there's still a little bit of foot dorsal flexion there, a minute amount. So yes, they may be landing initially on the heel, but actually where the majority of the weight is actually being transferred, the foot is directly underneath and it's flattened by that point. Now, when I read any article that sort of suggests that barefoot running is the way forward, I often think about some of the debris that I have to go across on some of my runs, but I also think about my young son. Now, he's coming up for 3 years old and he spends a lot of time on the front of his feet. You know, if he runs, he's right up on his tiptoes. He hasn't worn very cushioned shoes for very long at all. In fact, all of his shoes are very flat. I'm 43, I've worn very cushioned shoes for long periods of time through my life. I tend to run exactly as stated before. I think the outer edge of my heel comes down first, but where I transfer across the majority of my weight, my foot's directly underneath my hip. This type of approach seems to have enabled me to avoid any major injuries. I don't have any issues or problems. Perhaps I could improve my strength, perhaps I could alter my form very slightly. That might make me a little bit more efficient, but would I still have that lack of injury? You could suggest I'm doing it right maybe, because I don't get injured, I don't have any issues. You know, I continue to make some marginal gains in my running year on year. I'm clearly getting a little stronger, maybe a little bit more efficient, and I'm still avoiding any problems that will keep me off the road. So some interesting reading there. I'll place a link to that in the description of this video. What do you make of all these stats, people? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on all of this in terms of training and racing, avoiding injury, down in the comments. Musical interlude today comes courtesy of Ben Folds with his fantastic Ben Folds Live. I've always liked the title of this album. I think it's a really funny little quip on the fact he was in Ben Folds 5 and there were only 3 of them, and then he went solo and he did a live album. I think it's really humorous. There's some fantastic tracks on here, stretching back actually to the Ben Folds 5 era. My Philosophy is a fantastic tune. I've always tried very hard to kind of keep with my philosophy of doing things the way I kind of want to do them, rather than just sort of following the herd and doing the same old thing, really. Just doing things that are true to me, and that kind of makes me feel like I'm living the life the way I should live it, rather than what someone else is telling me to do. There's a few real tear jerkers on this album though, guys. Fred Jones Part 2 is particularly sad. I think it's all about like getting old and kind of seeing someone replace you in your job. So it feels like a little bit. I really like the Up Zach and Sarah though. A number of times I've been in a music shop and there's been like a girlfriend or something just sat looking really bored while I'm enjoying myself twiddling away on a chorus pedal. Not the Same though is the best track on this. It features some backing vocals by the audience themselves, quite haunting in fact. The piano playing on here is just second to none. It is fantastic. Ben Folds, an absolutely legendary piano player and a lyricist. Go and check it out, people. Ben Folds Live by Ben Folds. Thanks for tuning in, people. Hope you enjoyed the running news today. I'll be back with some more very soon. Hit that subscribe button, click the bell below for notifications. Also give this video a thumbs up, like, and share it with your running buddies. My name's EDDBUD, and I'll be seeing you